So I made a video about some comments that the CEO of JP Morgan made last week, Jamie Dimon. And he was on a panel talking about the social problems that some people are facing in America, people who are struggling, and poor people. And he made an offhand comment that he would tax the wealthy to pay for improving some of the things they deal with: healthcare, housing, education, etc. I made a video about that, and there's a lot of topics inside this conversation. And so I wanted to make some shorter videos to explore each one of these topics one at a time without having to spend 20 minutes on it. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is kind of his underlying premise that money is the answer here, and that money is the solution to the problems that people are facing, and especially that the government redistributing money is going to be the answer to these problems. So kind of point by point, I want to address basically his fundamental premise that this is the answer, or a substantial part of the answer, or increasing how much money we tax people and then spend on the poor will solve their problems any more than the already existing safety net would. And that premise is questionable and debatable. And if the premise is wrong, and if you analyze it correctly, I think you can not even get to the point where you talk about taxing the wealthy more or taxing certain people more, and who should those people be, which was the subject of my last video. Really, the first thing you might want to ask is whether this is the answer at all. So, starting from first principles, the first question I think everyone would ask is, should there be a safety net? And I think most people, overwhelming majority, almost everyone, would answer yes, there should be some sort of safety net. I am a conservative. I spend all day talking to conservatives, personally, on the phone, in chats, socializing. Spend all my time with Republicans and conservatives of all varieties, and I've never met anyone who thinks we should have no safety net at all. No one who will admit to it. And I ask that in these conversations when we're talking about policy, because I want to make sure we're all on the same page and that we all understand each other. So there should be a safety net for certain people, because things happen. And even if people make mistakes, as a society that has a lot of wealth, that has plenty of money, it's a compassionate thing for us to do to help people. So everyone agrees with that on some principle level, on some basic level. And I think we can just start from there. We all agree there should be some form of a safety net. The thing that Jamie Dimon doesn't understand, he doesn't understand what causes someone to be poor or what keeps them poor. And it's kind of not his fault, considered the world that he lives in. You know, he's one of the richest people in the world, and he was born well off, not elite as he is now, but he was upper class, born to the upper class. So in some sense, he is sheltered from having seen poor people in poverty and what poverty looks like and what poor people are like. So it's understandable that he thinks the problem is money and that the solution is money. But overall, really, the problem is personal choices that people make, and culture and families. Now, for Jamie Dimon, someone like him, you don't have to have personal experience with poverty and with poor people and poor communities to have an intellectual understanding and a strong economic grasp, actually, of what causes poverty and what keeps people in poverty. These things are knowable. I don't have to move to Saudi Arabia to understand some things about Saudi Arabia. There are books and articles, and we can have conversations. So in some sense, someone like Jamie Dimon can still learn these things and understand what I'm about to say here, even without personal experience. Well, I have personal experience. I grew up in a poor community in Minnesota, several of them to be precise, because I moved around a bit when I was a kid. And that was my environment growing up until I joined the Army and left. And I've seen the difference, by the way. I've seen a wide spectrum. I went to Ivy League schools, and I worked in New York, and I lived in New York and Boston. And so I've seen kind of both ends of the economic spectrum and everything in between. So I've seen how successful people and families and communities operate, and I've seen how less successful people and communities and families operate. So, with that being said, in poor communities, there is a real problem for people understanding things like financial basics, personal finance, long-term thinking and planning, thinking about the future, not living for today, making decisions that are you're going to be happy about a year from now, that you made that decision today. That is really the main problem and the main issue that we're having right now in America is culture, it's family, and it's personal decisions.